So Tim just asked me, was it true that I really sold peanuts in Yankee Stadium? And I said to him, was it really true that he started in a sales job? Yeah. And I think the honest answer for both of us is
yes.
We did both,
Pound
and
cake.
neither one of us ever thought we'd end up in marketing. So, but now that we have ended up in marketing, it's my role today to sort of be the grand inquisitor.
Okay.
And what I'm going to look is for you folks to actually help me out. So this is supposed to be an interactive Q&A. And there are microphones, I understand, in the audience. Of course, I can't see anybody because of the lights, so I'm just going to look out and assume there are questions, and somebody will stand up and, I guess, ask one. But let me start, Tim, if we could, with rolling some tape to sort of give a sense of what you've been up to and what you're trying to do, and then we'll go right into it.
Good.
So can we roll the tape, please?
Like the old love, the new love starts with a kiss. Like the old success, the new success still takes hard work. Like the old family, the new family has its own nicknames and special pancakes. Like the old youth, the new youth are still surprising us. Like the old community, the new community still keeps us connected.
There she is.
Because when you know what you stand for, you know where you're going. A whole new lineup for a whole new world.
Impala.
The new us, like the old us, is built on the things that matter most. Chevrolet, find new roads.
So, Tim, let me just sort of kick it off, which is to follow up on the speaker yesterday, which is that ad, which was the anthem for the Olympics, fundamentally talked about diversity, and you ran another ad about the changing nature of American families.
Sure.
Do you think advertising is now catching up to America, or do you think you're trying to be in the forefront and ahead of perhaps where we are? What was the thought process you used to go there?
I think, honestly, the consumer's further ahead than we even realize, and we're probably catching up in many ways. But the way we look at it is not so much about diversity, but about inclusion. You know, we're selling in 140 countries. We want to kind of reflect the constituency that we serve, the products that, or the customers that buy our products. And so America's changing and the world's changing, and the people that we showcased in that opening ceremony spot in particular all came out of social media. The other one that you referenced, Harris, was called The New Family, and how the family dynamics are changing. And we've really strived for authenticity in our storytelling, because people can see through things when they're not authentic. And so all of the talent, if you will, in the commercial were real families. They weren't a marketing research department telling us you needed 2 of this and 3 of that and 4 of that. So it came through in the campaign, I think, in a really big way.
Given the iconic nature of Chevrolet, how concerned were you that you would get negative feedback in both social media and even some of the political
Yeah.
by showing diverse families and diverse backgrounds?
I think at the end of the day, I get back to the consumers are further ahead than we are, and sometimes as brands, and you have to take a little bit of risk, right? But at the end of the day, for me, it wasn't risky because we were going to market in a very authentic way. Chevrolet is a broad brand. I mean, we sell vehicles that are probably the size of these two chairs put together, all the way up to heavy-duty pickup trucks that take up half the stage. So we have to come at it from a perspective of inclusion. And the reaction to the work, of course, I got a lot of letters, but at the same time, I also got a lot of support from the various groups saying that it's making them think differently about Chevrolet than they had in years. And so at the end of the day, it's about changing people's perceptions a little bit.
Well, changing people's perceptions, you spend an incredible amount of money. This is a heavy media-oriented audience today.
Yep.
You've recently sponsored a lot of events, media platforms, everything from Super Bowl to Olympics, NASCAR, Transformers,
Yep.
Captain Marvel today.
Yep.
Some work better than others. Interesting trends you see, sponsorship versus entertainment, things you think are important to think when you look at all these?
I mean, I think they all work differently, right? I had a chance to go a couple weeks ago with my son to the Daytona 500, and you see the level of engagement in NASCAR. That's an opportunity to really connect with a loyal following. The Olympics for us was a big platform, really to tell the story of fine new roads here in the U.S. And so that worked incredibly well. Most recently on the Oscars, we used, I guess you could use the word crowdsourcing, with our partnership at MoFilms to do a film competition around the world, and we selected one that won out of Korea. So they all work in a big way. I think at the end of the day, we are a big brand. As you saw from the sizzle reel, about every 6 seconds, somewhere around the world, somebody's buying a Chevrolet, and so we have to do kind of big things, right, to make this brand seem what it's worthy of.
What are you looking for from your media partners when the conversation takes place? Is it just placement? I mean, how do you sort of look at the value proposition of these?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, especially I see with my kids who are millennials, we're storytellers, right? Some are funny, some are emotional, some are very rational. And from a media partner perspective, I think we're looking for partners that can help us put our storytelling together with the right consumer. At the same time, in the auto industry, we have what they refer to as the front of the house and the back of the house. So the front of the house is where the car gets sold, and the back of the house is where you get it serviced and all those things. And the story always goes that the front of the house sells the first car, and the back of the house sells everyone after that. I think in the space of media, as the technology moves further and further along, media partners can help us find innovative ways to reach consumers probably faster and better than creative directors who came up from art school or had a liberal arts degree. So it's finding that connection point between the two and leveraging the strength of both. But that's really what I would look for, helping us connect with the right consumer.
Okay, and since I'm on the creative side of the house, now you're going to tell us how important the creative partners are.
Creative's awesome, we'll spend, it is, and it is funny.
Come on, get yourself out of this hole.
No, I'm not out of the hole. But what I would say is the CEO and the board will spend hours poring over a commercial and how we finished it and why we put a white car instead of a red car, and we'll spend $800 million on a buy, and it's sort of, there's not that there. But at the end of the day,
and that makes me happy. By the way,
and you have to, and you guys have been great partners for us. We have to have a really great creative product to start with as well.
So before I'm going to ask for a question in a second, but this issue of the front and who sells the second car, it's obviously your dealerships, the service. How do you manage the needs of brand building and driving yourself towards a top global brand versus that immediate need of driving dealer traffic?
Sure.
And what do the dealers think about what your programs are?
I mean, it's interesting the category we're in, right? let's talk about just the overall consumers at large. They probably go in to buy a vehicle every 6 or 7 years. And if there's two cars in the household, they're probably doing it every 3 to 4 years. So the idea of taking our dollars, if you will, and advertising that we're on sale or buy now is somewhat tone deaf for most of the consumers. We know that in any given month, only about 2% of the US population is going to buy a car. So taking all of the above-the-line media to shout that it's the big tent sale or the red carpet sale or this sale or that sale, I think the consumers really tune out. And so the strategy has been, and continues to be where I'm pushing, is to use digital, because when you're in the process for shopping for a new car, you're online, you're looking for, and this is where you want more information. You want storytelling, but you want a story that you can explain to your wife or your neighbor why, you know, it was funny, I spent 7 years at Porsche, and I launched the Cayenne for them, and everyone thought, you know, why would you need rational messages with Porsche, right? Well, you need it to explain to your neighbor why you spent $90,000 on an SUV. and so using digital and using media to be very focused in terms of where the consumer is at. The work that you saw there, the opening ceremony spot, is perfect, but it's not going to sell a car. We're really trying at that level to make people feel like Chevrolet's a brand for them. You know, you go back to the fads of purchase funnels and all these new metrics and all the new buzzwords that we like to chase around in marketing. But at the end of the day, the one thing that we keep our finger on the pulse of at any given time is how many people think Chevrolet is a brand for them. Because that, at the end of the day, synthesizes awareness, opinion, consideration, favorable opinion on all of these things. And if we're moving more and more people along this spectrum to say, you know what, next time out, I should look at a Chevrolet, then I think we're starting to make some progress. And it makes the back end, to where your question started on the retail side, a lot easier, a lot lighter. If we've got people showing up at our dealerships or at our virtual dealerships through the websites, they can work together. But it has to start with building sustainable demand.
Well, on that building sustainable demand, you and I have talked a lot about the willingness of people to give you information.
Yep.
And how surprised in some respects you have been, and frankly even I have been, with respect to that. I mean, how does that play into your models now?
Sure. Well, I mean, I think we're all conditioned, right? It is amazing what people will tell you, you know? But there's always a little bit of quid pro quo, right? So I want to get something back for it, whatever that might be. Access to information, being an insider, a deal. I mean, we tend, I think, sometimes to gravitate right to the deal part. But, you know, take Apple, for example. People weren't lined up outside the stores to buy the latest version because about the deal, right? It was about the product. And so I think you want to build a sense of community and insiders. I just came here from England. We were at the Manchester game, and watching the level of engagement there, we kicked off a program called What Do You Play For? And it becomes kind of the foundation of all of our sponsorship activities, whether it's soccer or football in the rest of the world, or NASCAR, or baseball, or whatever. It all started out playing, right? These kids all started out playing on the soccer field, or go-karting, or whatever. And so building kind of a loop and an engagement and a conversation with passionate fans is really what we're trying to do.
And along that line of passionate fans, I see somebody who we all know is very passionate about our business. So, David, I have to call upon David Bell to ask the first question, because I can't think of a more passionate person about advertising and market than my former mentor and partner. So, David?
Thanks, Harris. So you're in the middle of a great case history, and this morning's press, I think, handled very well the recall. We see marketing coming together between CorpCom and marketing. In this time, how are you and corporate communications connecting to make certain that all the progress you've made on Chevrolet keeps moving forward.
Sure. So probably one of my closest, two of my closest colleagues at Chevrolet. I've been there I've been with the company now. I'm coming up on my first anniversary there. So is my communications partner and the guy who's head of design. You know, we're kind of like a trio, if you will. And we work very closely. We meet once a week and really keep them apprised of where we're going. One of the things when you're building a car, right? It takes several years to bring this to fruition. It's a little bit like the airlines. Nothing annoys me more when the plane lands and nobody's there at the gate. It's like the plane just didn't land and show up, right? So why isn't there some? And so it's the same thing when building a vehicle. And so we have the lead times that maybe some of the other categories don't. And so we're starting now to enlarge our planning horizon in terms of what's coming and the storytelling. And the work that Harris and the team did for us, the first quarter work that debuted on the Olympics, it's probably one of the first times I would suspect at GM and Chevrolet that the work was done as a package, right? The goal is to put some deposits into Chevrolet as a brand, not just a collection or a house of models. And so working with communications, they're an important part of that storytelling because there'll be models that we won't want to or be able to afford to advertise. Corvette's a great example of that, a spectacular vehicle, but we count very heavily on the communications or PR team to help us in that space. So.
Tim's also, obviously, as you can all see, an expert in how not to answer a question about the recall.
Yeah.
And the obvious response by me was supposed to stop any questions beyond marketing. But following up on what you just said and sort of answering your question for David, you said on the Olympic sponsorship work, you unveiled 8 different vehicles.
Yep.
And they're all under the Find New Roads. So how do you support all those nameplates under the Chevrolet? How do you find sort of distinct identities for each product? And frankly, does it confuse the consumer? I mean, are you better off just having Chevy 1, Chevy 2, and Chevy 3?
Yeah.
Why do you go down the route you go?
No, I think you know, again, the scale that we're at, we need to be able to support these models in different ways. But I think the way, and we talk about building a global brand, it doesn't start with the models at all. It starts with what are we trying to say with Find New Roads? And Find New Roads, for us, if you reduced it to one word, is about possibilities. It's about, in the opening, we put a brand book together when I came last year, and the opening line, you know, there's this really beautiful shot, and it says, every road leads us to some place we're not, but could be. And that's what Find New Roads is about. And when Chevrolet, I would argue, was absolutely at its peak, late 50s, early 60s, it was a time in America when anything was possible. And we were going to the moon, we were doing this, we were doing all these really amazing things. And I think the human side still wants to believe in what's possible. And I think when you think about building a brand in China or Korea or India or Russia, it is about showing what the possibilities are. And so we have underneath of that idea of possibilities 5 words that when your work comes into us, we say, does that sort of fit? It's about confidence, it's about authenticity, it's about being young at heart, makes you kind of smile, it's not necessarily a belly laugh. It is about optimism, and I'll be now like Rick Perry and I'll forget the last one, you know? So, optimism and ingenuity. And you saw a little bit of that on the sizzle reel.
I was trying not to be Rick's competitor and offer you ingenuity.
There you go, thanks, yeah.
You know.
I only forgot one, and I remembered it, so
Yes,
I only had a
did.
senior moment for a second.
So when you did Find New Roads, though, and I was asked this actually yesterday by somebody, you know, you look at China.
Yep.
Different total background versus what Chevy has traditionally been. Yet you've put China and you've put Find New Roads on everything we're doing in China
Yep.
And that was obviously a conversation we had. Why don't you talk to the audience a little bit about what were you thinking about in those different markets of trying to take a
Sure.
brand globally that has always been an iconic American brand?
Yeah, so I just spent 3 days with the Chinese over at Man U. And if you go to China and you want to talk about what's possible, that's a country all about possibilities, right? And so we don't have to wave a flag around Chevrolet, nor do I want to, even in this country. It is about showing that sense of possibility, and you know, it is a tremendous growth market for virtually every category, but in automotive specifically, the expectation, if the forecasters are anywhere near correct, by 2022 there'll be 33 million new cars sold every year there. So that's a lot of people. It also brings certainly a lot of challenges in terms of urban congestion, urban mobility, and things like that. But the Chinese, you know, a bit of about Find New Roads. It's the first time in, I guess, the 104-year history of the company that there has been one rallying point for the brand, and it has been accepted in every country around the world, predominantly in English, but always in English if it needs the help with the local language. And for me, that's a real sign that it's coming together. At the same time, Find New Roads, if it survives, and I said when I came to the company, because it predated me by about 4 months, I hope when I retire we'll still be talking about it, right? I mean, I think great brands are built on consistency and a variety of other things, but consistency being one of them. And so in China, we're in it for the long haul. You know, it just became our second largest market, and it was Brazil up until that point. Chevrolet's changed a lot. Most people think it's a company that sells cars somewhere between the coasts, and the reality is right about 65% of the vehicles are sold somewhere outside the 50 states. So and that's changed in 10 years, literally in inverse. It was the other way around back in the early part of the 2000 decades. So yeah.